I guess let's go in order. Let's start with the pandemic. How have you been
Let's
handling the
do it.
pandemic?
Okay, so we're kind of extra on the pandemic, meaning you know how there's no judgment because everyone's kind of fleshing it out, doing their own story with what works for them. So I would say we're more in the cautious side. We are being careful who we're around, being selective of where we go and what we do. I would say because of all that we're stewarding in this season, we just want to be able to lead with strength and not be distracted by taking the chance that one of us could get sick. And even though we can't control it and you can do all the right things and obviously life can still hit, we're trying to do our part by being extra cautious. But we do have those moments where we feel like we're about to lose our mind. We have those moments because my husband and I work together. And so we're best friends. We love living life together, but we're together constantly. So at the beginning of this, I remember I had hit a low point where I said, babe, your breathing is annoying me right now. So all that to say, it's going well. I'm grateful for our health, but we're more on the cautious side where we're not just like out, no mask, just doing everything. We're more selective, but I'm not mad at someone who's on the other side of that spectrum who feels like they got to do it what works best for them. Yeah.
That sounds like a nice way of saying that you two are the corona police, like my husband, because my husband is the coronavirus police. I mean, we
Yep.
disinfect the groceries before they come into the
Yep.
house, face masks,
Yep.
gloves on different
Yep.
things that people touch. Like, it is a
Yep.
full blown thing. And I'm not going to help it. It may come get me, but it's going to have to fight to find me, is what I'm
Doing
saying.
Yep.
our part. Yeah, I'm the one that's way on alert. So I would be like your husband. Earl's on a quick 24-hour trip right now. And I called him and I said, I know you love and care for our family, but because he's very loving and he hugs everyone and he's just very friendly, he knows no stranger. And so I said, I need you to be cautious, Earl, on this trip, not like loving the whole world, hugging complete strangers on this trip.
Yeah.
So I'm the strong
That
one
sounds
in this.
For sure. Okay, well then, yeah, my husband is definitely that way as well because he makes sure, like, even when we're like recording for church or something, he's like, "All right, come on,
Yep.
you,
Yep.
out of here."
Yep. Yep.
So, how has that been for the kids? For you, just mentally, emotionally, what has that been like?
Yeah, I would say we have highs and lows. The toughest part would be navigating with our teenager. We have a 4-year-old. Actually, she just turned 5. So we have a 5-year-old, we have a 9-year-old, and we have a 15-year-old. So we have one in every season. And they're all taking it differently at different times. But for our 15-year-old, he really reached his limit probably about 3 weeks ago, where he just said, it's not good for me to be home nonstop. Like, it is just not good for me. I want to see my friends. And so that was one of those things that we had to weigh out the pros and cons of what's this going to do to his mental health long term, because he wants to go play basketball with his friends. He just wants to be a kid. He can only, like any of us, be home for so long. And I remember we took it really seriously. We called the parents and said, basically, where have y'all been? What have you been doing?
Right. Right.
Because we want our son to hang out, but also we recognize that everybody he hangs out with is everybody y'all hang out with.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit awkward because you don't want to be those weird parents. He's 15. Parents, I'm noticing as our kids get older, they're a little more relaxed and we feel like the ones who are a little extra. But
Hmm.
I wasn't ashamed to call. And so we found out that they had been taking some precautions. So we let him go. But we're taking it case by case. But when we saw the look in his eyes, we knew he needed to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it sounds like you are stewarding this season very well with a lot of intentionality, a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
precautions. What do you do in the moments where you feel like, okay, I've had enough? Like, what do you do to talk yourself down off of that fence that we get on?
Baking.
Ah, yes.
So
Got it.
I've probably tried 10 different cookie recipes. I've made all the banana bread recipes. I've tried all the different ways of eating. I'm gonna just try vegan for a second, just because. Then
Yeah.
I went to okay, I'm gonna try like eating just a ton of meat right now. Then I've tried healthy cookies where you cook them very healthy with natural sugars. Then I've tried the other extreme where it's all sugar. So I would say I take out my lack of control in all the snacks, all the chips, all the things that are not good for me in this season is how I'm coping. And just trying to do the best that I can and deciding, because at one point we had this bright idea, my husband and I he was like, let's get shredded. Let's get shredded during quarantine. Like, let's get abs. Let's just do this. And so we tried it for 2 days and just decided it was too depressing. We're going with, it's too much. Why are we going to put all that pressure on ourselves? My summer body can wait. Like, it can wait. It doesn't have to be swimsuit ready right now. Why not in the winter?
Yeah, why not in the winter? Why not in the winter?
Winter is the new summer.
Let's just say that right. I proclaim it. I decree it. It's already done. I totally agree with that. I love that you said lack of control, because that has been just one of the recurring themes, is just like feeling out of control. I think I'm taking out my aggression on my kitchen too. I found a New York Times cookie recipe. I don't know if you tried that one, where you have to put in the refrigerator for 24 to 36 hours and then you bake them. I'll send it to you.
I need that.
I will send it to you. It's amazing. Yeah. But that lack of control.
But I've cried. I've laughed. I've tried to make myself cry. When you have those days when you're like, I'm sad right now. I have emotions that I need to work out, but they're not coming out. They're just stuck in there. So then you try to like force cry, where you're just like, and nothing's I'm just telling you all the things where you're just trying to get it out. But then you'll find what's wild is you can't like schedule a breakdown. You can't schedule a moment where you're like, what, I'm just going to get out every emotion. Sometimes it just creeps up on you. You did a post not too long ago where you just gave yourself permission to kind of grieve for a moment, just all that was going on. And that was freeing for me, because I read those words and I was like, you are speaking my life right now. So I would say it comes over me in waves, but I would prefer it to feel more controlled, where it's like I'm writing in my journal, I'm having a moment with Jesus. It's just the two of us. And then my emotions come out just in that confined area.
Yes.
But instead, but instead it just creeps out at an unexpected random time. Yeah.
So that's how I've been feeling. I was talking to Dr. Anita, and I was sharing with her that I feel like I am more emotional now than I generally am. I am not one for emotions, just because I got things to do. You know what I mean? I don't
have time to be sad. I don't have time to be sad.
I don't have time for
that. To tell you all my problems.
No, I don't have time for that. Yeah. But this season, I've really had to sit with them. And I think what really made me realize how much I suppressed my emotions were when we were about to do that prayer call. So we're doing a weekly prayer call that Christine Kane was leading not too long. I think it was like the very next morning after we learned about Ahmaud Arbery's murder. You and I were kind of texting about, getting on the prayer call, how we were feeling about getting on the prayer call. Little did we know that would just be the beginning of what would become an awakening, a new awakening of just like the racial inequities that exist within the country. And when processing those things, I think that one of the things that you and I both kind of identified is that like we're going into this space that is predominantly white as Black women, and like navigating that, and how do we bring it up? Do we bring it up? Does it matter to them? And so it kind of became this like full thing. And I've been more emotional than I think I've ever been when we've had these, I don't even want to call them awakenings, because there's this undercurrent of it that's always taking place. And then we have eruptions, right? But it's in the undercurrent of our world. But in this most recent eruption, to see so many different white people speaking out about what has happened made me emotional, because it felt like this does matter to people. How have you been coping with that?
Yeah, it hits me in different waves and different moments. So we've been trying to kind of fast forward a quick history lesson with our oldest, because through our whole entire lives, we've kind of prepared him in little bite-sized pieces. It wasn't one day where we just had this conversation and just said, we need to prepare you for this world, little by little. So for instance, when we go to parent-teacher conferences, or when we're going to meet the teacher or going to go visit a school that he might be attending, we talk to him about, this is how we carry ourselves. And this is, you just can't like roll up any old way. So I feel like his whole life, we've been subtly preparing him. And as he's gotten older, we've had, way more just real transparent conversations, because he knew before all this happened, like, you don't wear a hoodie, like, you just don't. And I saw another picture recently of Trayvon, and I was looking at it closely, and it looks like my son. And so we just decided a long time ago, you will not wear hoodies, because we just do not want to take any chances. But these last two instances really have kind of fast forwarded the tape, where we've had to have candid conversations with him, and just no sugarcoating it, just straight to the point. And it's very sobering raising a teenage boy who's about to become a man in this season, because we're caught in the middle of two worlds. One moment, we want him to know, you can lift any room. You are God's man for this hour. Nobody needs to feel sorry for you. You're confident, you're a leader, you're courageous, you're handsome, you're called. But then at the same time, we need to remind him of the real world, where if he's at the wrong place at the wrong time, they're going to come to him. So if he's, because you know what I'm saying? Yeah, and so the sobering part of raising my boys during this time has been the most heartbreaking part of this journey, is just concern for their safety, concern that the wrong person at the wrong time is going to judge them or blame them for something that they didn't do. And so it's living in two worlds, one full of faith of God's gone before him, but at the same time being very wise with what we allow him to do. And then when he goes places, it's how you have to carry yourselves. He recently went bike riding with some friends from his school, and he was the only Black kid in the bike riding group. And so I said to him before he left, and I was praying the whole time that he was gone, I said, you stick with your friends. Don't go riding off by yourself. Don't do anything stupid. And so I feel like before we would be more abstract in our coaching, and now we're very direct. Yeah.
So how does that, you're a blended family?
Yep.
Well, not blended, but we have, oh, you mean like our daughter, our little girl?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, well, tell us about your family for those who are maybe just being introduced to you for the first time.
Yes. Okay. So we have 3 kids, and 2 out of our 3 are adopted. We have a huge heart for adoption. Our oldest is biological. My 9-year-old we adopted, but we've had him since he was 5 weeks old. He's our baby. Like, he's a McClellan. Our last name is McClellan. He's a McClellan through and through. His name's Grayson. We call him Wonder in a Bottle, because he just has this innocent, childlike nature. He builds things with foil. Who builds things with foil? He can build anything with foil, and just is brilliant. And then we have a little girl. Her name is Elle Grace, and she's actually half white, half Hispanic. And so it is wild when our family goes someplace, you can tell that people are like, wait a second, you're chocolate, she's vanilla, how did this happen? But she also is just a miracle story. Literally one night, my husband and I were at home. We had our 2 boys, they were in bed, we were watching TV. I got a text message from someone that said a baby's been born. Her birth mom abandoned her at the hospital. Do you know of a family from our church who would be interested in adopting her? And we weren't trying to adopt any more children. We were good. We were busy building our church and just, living a very full life. So it wasn't like in our prayer journal, like, we need a little girl, none of that. It was one of those out of the blue, such a time as this moments. And I read the text to Earl and I said, do you think this is our daughter? And he said, I think it's our daughter. Let's go for it. That was a Monday. Friday, we were driving to pick her up, and our life has never been the same. Like, never been the same.
So it's not often that we see Black families who have adopted vanilla children.
It's usually the other way around.
It usually is the other way around.
We missed the memo.
That's fine. It's fine. That feels like a totally different conversation, because I've seen a lot of like white women who are explaining to their Black sons that they have adopted, know, about what it means to be Black in America, or having learned because of that. How is that balancing, an issue that she may not necessarily be aware of unless you bring her into the awareness of it? Although I imagine, because she is in this Black family, that there are moments that you maybe have experienced or have yet to experience where she recognizes just the disparities that could potentially exist.
Yep, she hasn't picked it up yet, but it is very fascinating on what you expose kids to what they have an affinity towards. So she's going through this phase where there's this little pop teenager, little girl who's like, she just has like a ton of Instagram followers, like millions, and she makes all these videos, and there's like shoes and dolls and hair accessories and all the things. And so this little girl has a different hair color than my little girl has. And already I can tell just by us allowing her to watch these videos, now she wants her hair to look like that little girl's hair. So now on purpose, we're being intentional and just talking to her about all the different colors and all the different types of hair, and that everything is beautiful. But what happens is, and I think happens to all kids, no matter their color, if they only see something over and over again, they start to want to drift towards that and think that that is the definition of beauty. So it's important to us from a very young age that she knows her identity, that she has self-worth, and even though she looks different from us, that she realizes that, number one, she's our baby. Like, we got up with her in the middle of the night. We changed all those diapers. I deal with all the tantrums right now. Like, that's my little girl. But I want her to always know that she is beautiful just the way she looks, because she has dark hair and dark eyes. But because of certain characters that she sees, she thinks, okay, that is the definition of beauty. I need to be that. So now we're trying to be even more intentional, because we thought, oh, she's young. We don't need to have those talks already. But already this world is already trying to shape her before we even can on what is beauty. So we're kind of doing a timeout, and we're like, wait, no.
That's so true. We've got 4 girls and 2 boys. And so this idea of what the standard of beauty is, even amongst themselves, like, I want to be more like this sister, I want to be more like that sister. And then you bring in the culture, and that's a whole nother definition of how you define beauty, and really teaching your child self-worth. I think we can't teach, though, what we don't possess, right? And so if we haven't come to a place where we aren't comfortable with ourselves, then we can even convincingly persuade our children to be authentically comfortable in their own skin, because we don't know how to do it ourselves. And I feel like you are so confident and authentic in your own skin. And I don't know if you've always been that way or if it's been a journey for you. I know we talked a little bit. You know, I want to put out a video to help some of our new white girl friends understand things they can or cannot say to Black girls. And I think
that was everything.
I'm going to do it for June. I want to turn it around for Juneteenth. I have a whole idea in my head, and I want to put it up for Juneteenth. That is my goal.
I'm here for it.
Okay, so you have to tell our audience one of the things that you added to the list, and then I want to learn how you became comfortable in your own skin.
Okay, yes. So right now I have extensions in my hair. But in real life, reality, my hair, I do have longer hair. So my whole life growing up, and you touched on this, girls would always grab my hair and say, is that your real hair? And they were like shocked that it was my real hair. And so you don't want to feel like a zoo animal, like that you're just like a petting exhibit where people like touching you and like, but for whatever reason, my whole life, the color of my skin, people are just drawn to it, and they just get all up, like you talked about, in my personal space and just are just wanting to grab it and touch it and talk about how soft it is. So like you said so beautifully, I can't even say it better, but just ask permission first.
Let's not do that.
Exactly. It's hilarious. Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like, and you're from, are you from Dallas? I know you guys are in Dallas, but like, where are you from?
California girl. So I grew up in California.
Really? What part?
So I was born in San Francisco, raised in Sacramento, and then I went to school at Cal State Long Beach before I transferred to a private school in Oklahoma.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you are so were you surprised when you got to Texas at how different Texas is from California? Because I'm from Texas living in California. You're from California living in Texas. When I came to California, someone was looking at me a little crazy in the store, and I came home and I told my husband, like, I'm pretty sure I just saw a racist man in the store. And he was like, no, not here. You didn't. I was like, no, I know what it feels like. What I have learned, though, is like, people can just have a bad attitude here and it not necessarily be race related. But in Texas, there's a certain look you get, and you know that you are not welcomed here. How shocked were you when you moved?
Yeah, I was very shocked. Oklahoma and Texas, because I've lived in both places. I was very shocked. Any small town areas, they always just wake you up real fast. We were we took our kids on a little trip. This was before all this COVID stuff happened. And I remember being in a grocery store, and I was the only person that looked like me in the grocery store, and the looks and just the heat that you feel.
It's the heat. It's the heat.
Yeah, the heat that you feel. But I'm like a mama bear at heart. Like, I'm like, love people. I'm very loving. I'm very optimistic. I'm the person who's going to say the glass is half full. But I have a mama bear kind of like, don't mess with my family. Don't put me in a certain box side of me that my gangster side comes out. And so anytime you try to press that, it's like, okay, wait. So I remember being in that grocery store, and this guy just gave me this look like, why are you in our town? Why are you in our store? And I just like walked up on him and I said, just so you know, I said, and no matter my story, he still didn't have the right to treat me that way. So I could have, if no matter my story, but I just needed, this is all that came to my mind in that moment. But I said, don't judge me. I said, my husband and I are here. We've been married for over 15 years. We're on vacation with our kids. We are college sweethearts. Do not judge me. And then I just kept going with my cart. So every once in a while it comes over me. Or if I hear, we were at McDonald's a couple years ago, and I heard these two older men talking about how the neighborhood was going down. And so I will just confront strangers when I hear stuff that's just nonsense, because I'm very passionate about it. And I just can't let it slide and go, oh, they grew up in a different era. They don't know any better. Like, I feel very passionate when I hear it or see it. I can't just keep quiet. So I'm kind and nice, but when you mess with my family or you mess with people that I love, I just got to let you know.
See, which is so beautiful, because every now and then you just have to let people know, like, listen, I am not the one like that. Like, that is not me. Have you found that, like, transitioning in between the different cultures and the different worlds has been challenging or easier because of your ability to, what Dr. Anita calls, she translates cultures. So you strike me as someone who can translate cultures. I think I met you in predominantly white circles, right? And so when you're a black girl in a predominantly white circle, sometimes black people look at you from the outside in and say, oh, she's white on the inside, she's not black at all, like whatever that means, right? But then when you're in the white circle too, you don't exactly fit in either. But I think that God places us in those spaces strategically so that we can communicate and translate on behalf of the parties that we're representing in that room or in any given moment. But have you always been that way? And if so, like, how did you navigate that?
My whole life, I feel like God wired me and prepared me to just live well in both worlds. But what's interesting, so I'm going to rewind in just a second, but what's interesting is the lonely side of it, which I feel like recently I've been kind of feeling that more, like been in my feelings more about the lonely side of it. Because I remember texting you that day and just voicing some of my feelings and emotions, because I had an epiphany in that moment of like, wait a second. I've been running with so many people for so many years, but when a moment like this happens, like, this is who I need to talk to. So that's like broad strokes, but rewinding it. So I've lived in both worlds. So growing up, my grandma lived in Compton. So I would visit her in the summers and stay with her all summer long. So she was in the inner city, in the thick of everything. So I hung out with all the kids in the neighborhood and just was influenced by so much. But then when I would go back home, my mom put me in private school growing up. So I feel like I've lived in both worlds. Does that make sense? Like, I've had my foot in both places, but at the end of the day, I'm so grateful that God made me the way that I am. At the end of the day, I'm so glad that I'm Black. I love being Black. It's so much fun. It's who I am. But I am grateful for the diversity of the world that I live in. I love that I have white sisters. I love that I have Black sisters. I just think it makes life more exciting when you're exposed to a little bit of everything and everybody. But at the end of the day, I know who I am. I know where I'm from. I know what shoulders I'm standing on. I was just thinking about earlier today, all the brave women that have gone before us, that stood up, that gave their lives so that we could be doing what we're doing right now, you know? And so I'm very aware, but I'm a sister through and through. There's no doubt about it.
Well, if there was any doubt in anyone's mind, when I was doing Instagram thing with Christine Kane, and my husband came and fixed my hair because it was sticking up. And then I was like, yes, babe. When we got off, I was like, thank you, honey, for looking out for my hair. He was like, oh, no, that wasn't me. Onika told Earl, and Earl came over, and I had to come over there. I was like, yes, I stand a queen looking out for a queen.
I got you.
I love it.
I got
you spoke a little. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Say it.
I was going to say, I remember when I first met you, we were at a conference together, and I saw you in my peripheral. And number one, it was so comforting to see someone who looked like me, like similar, like a sister. And I just looked over at you, and I was just, number one, I was like, you're so beautiful, because you are so beautiful. And just very graceful and elegant and strong. And I remember catching eyes with you thinking, she is stunning. And I just remember feeling comforted. And from time to time, you know, we cross the same, and there's this affinity, because it's like, hi, I'm not alone right now. I'm not alone, you get it. So I'm just so grateful for you, and I thank God for you.
Well, I think that's exactly what I was going to talk about, is really the loneliness of being a Black woman in predominantly white spaces, whether that's the faith world or the corporate world or whatever. There is a loneliness that you feel. And I don't know that we talk about that a lot, because, you know, you don't want to make white people uncomfortable, and you don't want to make it seem like you can't handle being in the room either. But there is a loneliness. What do you think that is? I mean, I think there is something about knowing someone in this room can kind of understand my culture. When I was talking to Chris, I was telling her that in order to be in white spaces, a lot of times we conform to the white space, the white language, the white culture. And it's easy for us to do because, you know, maybe we've gone to private school. We live in a majority white world. And so it's easy for us to kind of just slip into that. But there are moments where we kind of have to pull back on maybe some of our, I don't want to say our Blackness, but like if we start patting our head because our weave is itching, you know, like not everybody in the room, and then you catch your hand and you got to remember where you are. Like not everyone in the room is going to pick up on some of those things that are just like unique to our culture. And it can be very lonely to be in private white institutions, to be in those spaces, and yet we're called there. And so like, how do we deal with that alienation?
It's, I feel like recently, in light of everything going on, I've always been aware of it, obviously, but I feel recently it's becoming more tender and more of like a sensitive, like oh, I feel that when you say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Very recent. I feel after that day, when we were on a call together, and it was just like me and you and two other girls that were Black that were on the call. That was my first time in a long time that I realized how alone and how lonely it is being a Black woman in leadership and ministry and being in all white circles, because it was in that moment, you know, talking about, you know, broad strokes of like, okay, what are you doing to get your kids to read better? Or what are you doing for when it comes to problem solving and raising a teenager? All those things, like there's broad strokes that we all can do together. But when moments like this happen, when there's a crisis in our nation, it was fascinating how the tables turned, and basically everyone's calling us saying like, I need to talk to you. What do you think about this? I need to process with you. And fewer are, how are you doing in all of this? Does that make sense?
Right.
So that's been very painful and tender for both Earl and I in this season. And also it's a little bit exhausting, because we're constantly just being that, I feel like we're like 1-800 dial your Black friend.
and I volunteered for the role, and yes, it can be a little exhausting.
There's a hotline right now, and obviously we're honored and thankful to be Bridgeville.
Sure, and want to help. Yeah,
oh my gosh, and be a part of the healing. Like I wouldn't trade it for the world. But what's fascinating is the few amount of people, just friends, we have friends all around the world that get it. And so I think this was the first time in a long time that I felt that not a lot of our friends get it. And so that's what made it lonely, because that day it was like an epiphany for me where, wow, I feel so alone right now. And I was messed up the whole rest of the day, because it's like you have this tribe who you love, who you would do anything for, and you know that they would do anything for you. but there's this one wound that you have that you feel like this tribe around you doesn't, you're just like bleeding, but there's not anyone coming up to you saying like, let me help you put a Band-Aid on it, because they're just afraid of all the gushing out blood. So they're just standing paralyzed in fear instead of, you know what, I'm gonna get a CPR kit, let's do this, I'm in this with you, I'm gonna get blood all over my hands. And so I felt kind of in that moment that day, I have this wound that this tribe that I love and that I know loves me is just looking at my wound instead of helping bring healing.
And I have to tell you that I have been battling within myself about how we got to that place. As Black women in these spaces, you know, is it that, this is what I've been asking myself, but I want to hear your thoughts. Like, is it that we didn't feel safe enough to share the wound? And so we therefore robbed ourselves of the care that they would have shown? Right. Did we make an assumption that they would not care, so we didn't say anything at all? Did we want to make the space comfortable, so we didn't want to play the race card? Is there a fear of being rejected from those rooms, so we don't want to do anything that like breaks up the chemistry that exists, even if that means we're bleeding on our own? Because I'm just trying to, I feel like I know that we're talking about it now, and, you know, so like God's timing and all of that stuff is great. Yeah. But as I really plan going forward, like who I want to be in these moments, and I'm not, you know, talking like it's got to be Black Panthers with my beret and my gun across my back necessarily, but I'm wondering, like, what responsibility do I have in those moments to bring that truth into these circles where I'm not trying to like make them so comfortable that I miss out on the opportunity to teach them, because I am there and I do believe that I'm there so that all of me can be represented. And so I don't know, I've just been battling with this idea of like, should I have said more? Should I have, like Dr. Anita, that call that you're talking about, you know, I was prepared to not bring up Ahmaud Arbery at all, because I didn't think that they would care. I didn't think that it would really matter. I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. And so I was prepared to get on that prayer call, everyone pray about their thing, and then for me to hang up and then kind of deal with the trauma of, you know, what was happening in the world. And Dr. Anita brought it up that she needed prayer because her heart was tender about it. And I felt like that's how I should have done it, maybe, that when we've had these moments that I should have done that for my community that could not speak up in those spaces. What do you think?
I think now, in light of everything going on, it gives us more freedom and more permission. I feel like before, so for instance, when Trayvon happened, I remember talking to some of my white sisters. We were on a trip together. And it was one of those, this is funny, but so there's 3 couples going on a trip. One couple backed out. And so they were like, we want y'all to come so bad that we're going to pay your way to come. We were like, we're there. So we went on this trip. And I remember we were talking about parenting and what it's like to parent a Black son and how we don't have our son wear a hoodie. And there was this lack of understanding. And there wasn't this openness, even though they adore us, adore our kids. There was this blind spot that it wasn't the moment where they were wanting to fully understand what it was like, because I think so many precious white people, well-meaning, think that raising a Black son is the same as raising a white son. And so when we were very clearly saying we don't have our kids wear hoodies, they were just shocked and saying, you can let your kid wear a hoodie. And they didn't believe us. But now those that didn't believe us now believe us. So I think the time is now more than ever, because everyone is so hungry and open. Not everyone, but so many people that I know right now are hungry and open and want to know. Give me the R version. Don't give me the PG-13. Don't give me the G version. But I feel like before all the escalation, some of my friends just wanted the G and the PG-13 version, and it was hard for them to understand that this was real life. But these nightmares that we've all been living has kind of shook everybody out of this fairy tale of like, everybody's the same, we're all the same, we all love each other, to like, wait a second, your son is different from my son, your son will be treated differently than my son. But I remember when I was trying to be the one of like, hey, let me just educate you, there was a resistance because of the love that they have for my family, thinking that my family is going to be treated the same as their family. It was like that love is blinding.
That's so true. I think when you have too many instances where you try to share and they don't get it, you stop sharing altogether because you realize that this is going to require a level of education and patience that is, I don't have it to give, because trying to educate someone who doesn't fully understand it is challenging, because there's just when we don't have anywhere to start from, so we can't move forward. But I have been encouraged and been made emotional by now having this influx of support, because for so long everyone used the all lives matter versus black lives matter analogies, and there's so many of them. But I've been thinking about that one where the house is on fire, or if there's a house on fire in their neighborhood and someone's like, help, the house is on fire, and then someone comes out and yells all houses matter, that just wouldn't be the right time because this house in particular is on fire. And I feel like in the Black community we've been fighting this fire that has been existing in the community by ourselves. And every now and then someone peeks out the window, someone steps out and says all houses matter, and then they go back in, but we're still having to fight this fire by telling our children to wear hoodies, by recognizing when we walk into certain spaces we need to carry ourselves a certain way, or they may think a certain thing about us and call the police or whatever. But having other people come out into our proverbial neighborhood where this house is on fire with their buckets, with their cups of water, with their fire trucks, and say, hey, this house is on fire and it matters to me, I think has really made me emotional, because I'm just so used to us being the only ones in the fight. To see white people come in and say, I get it, I'm not okay with it, and I'm not going to make you fight this by yourself. Like, I can remember we were coming home. We didn't know that there was a march planned in our neighborhood, and there was just like a sea of white people with Black Lives Matters posters. And I text my kids pictures and videos of it. I'm just like getting chills thinking about it right now, because like, you just don't know that you matter, that it really matters to anyone outside of you. And I sent my kids the video and the pictures, and I said, we matter to them. We matter to them. And that is the power of white people coming along and saying, I get it. Is for so long, like we believe it. We think we matter. We're fighting because we matter. But there is something about someone coming into that fight with you and saying, no, I got your back. So you can take a break and heal emotionally and breathe and figure out where you're bleeding before picking up the water hose again. So many of us are so busy fighting for injustice that we haven't had the ability to even heal or look at the trauma that we have endured because of the injustice. And now more than ever, I think part of the reason why we're more emotional is because like we're having an opportunity to say, wow, this really has hurt, that I feel like I don't have value, or that my children may not have value, or that while everyone else is telling their son they can wear hoodies, I know that it could literally be a death sentence for mine.
100%. And scripture talks about all the parts of the body working together. And I feel like watching our world come together, people in other countries are marching with Black Lives Matter signs. It is just so powerful. And this is statement and this anthem. And I feel like now, obviously it's just not going to go away overnight, but I do feel like now more people have their eyes open, and more people are sensitive to injustice, more sensitive to racism, and more people are patrolling and looking and on alert. It's like when little kids, you teach them about stranger danger, and they're all together and they see a stranger and they're like, stranger, stranger. I feel like our world right now is awake and mad and fed up and coming together and go, that's racism, that's injustice, that's wrong. When before it was just like, that's racism, that's injustice. Right. Now it's this like choir, this anthem that's shattering these old world paradigms and mindsets. It's powerful, inspiring, and encouraging.
It's so powerful. And I've never been to your church, but I've been to events that your church kind of hosted and facilitated. And I stalk you guys on the internet. So I know that you guys have a really diverse community. How are you leading your community through this?
Yeah. We are very aware because just like you said, it's very diverse, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. And I would say we're taking it one moment at a time, but we're very mindful to catch everybody up. So we have some in our church that are like heartbroken because they had no idea any of this was happening in our world, or weren't ready to understand that it was happening. Then we have those in our church, our African-American community, our Black community, who's very much in pain, very much like, so let's sound the alarm as we should. So I feel like it's both. We're holding both hands. We're waking up our white congregation to just say, hey, obviously this is a reality. This is what's going on. And Earl's thinking of all these different angles and ways to tell this story the best that he can. And then comforting, crying, grieving with our Black congregation. So it's like we have a blended family. So we're leaning into the cries of our blended family, but acknowledging the pain, the hurt, and the injustice. And Earl, and all throughout his sermons, he's 100% Earl, 100% Black all the time. He's not anyone but that. And all the world's coming together. They appreciate that and love that. But when the white people at our church bring their white friends, they are surprised that Earl is Black because they don't lead with my pastor's Black. They're just like, come to my church. So I would say that we're leading in both circles and loving and serving, like educating, raising up, crying, comforting, wiping our wounds, educating, raising up, correcting, crying together, hurting. So it's like taking care of our kids, but also being very clear. You know, we've had people in our church that don't understand when you say Black Lives Matter. And so Earl's had 1,000,001 conversations, but so many people are taking this shift and are hungry and want to get it right. And then our Black congregation is very forgiving and grace-filled and also having lots of conversations so that Earl and I don't have to have all the conversations.
Yeah.
But it's been,
No, I love that because I said that when speaking with Chris, like we are fighting for an America we've never seen before. And
right?
the truth is that like we want white people to come all the way to where we are, but they don't know how to get all the way to where we are, which means that we're going to have to go and get some of us, someone's going to have to volunteer. Everyone can't come. Everyone's not ready. Everyone's not able, but we're going to have to send a few spies into Jericho to scope out the land so that we can figure out how we can begin to really affect this change. And it sounds like you guys are building incredible bridges there.
We're trying. It's one of those things, as I know you know, where you feel like I just got to say it all and risk that you're going to misunderstand me. Because at the end of the day, we know our heart. God knows our heart. And we know that racism and the pain that we've all experienced is wrong. It's ugly. It's demonic. But at the end of the day, if we don't say it the correct way, if we don't say it enough times, we can be misunderstood. Or if we say it too much, we can be misunderstood. So we just got to say it how it comes out and be true to who God's created us to be for this moment and not be apologetic for how God has wired us to lead in this moment. But it is exhausting to try to please and try to say something. We've never led our church from, well, if we say this, then that person that helped sponsor the kids wing, we have to say this, otherwise they're going to leave the church. Like, we're never trying to lead to appease. Does that make sense? We got to be true to how God's called us to be in this hour, knowing that we're going to make mistakes, knowing that we can't say it all every single Sunday, every single post. Like, there's so much that I still need to get out that I haven't gotten out yet, but I got to just take it one moment, one day at a time. Meaning there's so many, you know, just like you, there's like 100 captions and posts that you could write. You know, one minute I'm looking at pictures of my boys and have all these words that I want to write. Then another minute I'm looking at a protest and have all these words that I want to write, all these feelings. And another minute I'm thinking of every time that I've experienced racism and I want to take a moment and just talk about it. But it's just, I got to just take it one moment at a time, do what I can do. Earl can only do what he can do, and then trust God to meet us. Because at the end of the day, we want to be and live in a world that we have not seen before, and we want to be a part of bringing that change.
I've been so fearful as we are really fighting for this new world that our new allies will grow weary because maybe they say the wrong thing and they get feedback. Listen, we live in a social media culture,
Happening.
and if you say
Yep.
the wrong thing, everyone is not going to look at you like the way that we look at you. And if they take issue with what you say or challenge what you say, like my fear is that people will end up not saying anything at all. And so I've been trying to really navigate teaching them, but also letting them know like this is a battle zone. You know what I mean? Like you say the wrong thing and shots could get fired, but you got to really mean this from a place of conviction and not just like
Purity.
exactly. It's got to be pure, because when it's pure, even when you take a text, you know that you were saying it from a pure place. You don't mind apologizing if you need to,
Yep.
learning and growing. You're not going to come into this space as an expert, so you can expect you might as well start working on your apologies now. You're going to need them. You're going to need them.
Yep. On the ready. On the ready.
We're all going to need them, because we're entering this space new, as babes. And if we're going to continue to grow, we've got to be willing to make mistakes. What's your greatest hope and maybe your greatest worry with this new change and transition?
Yeah, my greatest hope is I just go back to my boys, and I get emotional thinking about it, but I just see so much on the inside of them, so much promise, such presence, such strength. And my hope and prayer is that while I'm on this planet, that I'm going to get to see them flourish, not be judged because of the way they look, but to be able to be treated equally. If they're in college and it's a professor, that professor is going to see potential in them. If it's they're buying their first car, that the loan officer is going to say, you get this. If it's buying their first house, that they're not going to be judged. Whatever situation or space my boys walk into, I want them to be given the benefit of the doubt, and I want them to be able to be seen, strong, and capable like God has created them to be. That's my greatest hope, is my sons and just the sons of this world. So many of the Black boys that are just growing up in this world today, for them to just have a fair chance to crush it. Yeah. 1000%, because I feel like it's our Black boys that are more under attack than even our Black girls. And so our Black girls need grace and prayer and all the things too, but I feel like it's the men that are really, there's just this major attack on their lives. And so my hope is that I get to see my boys live in a world where they are treated equally, and that the boys of this world and the young men and the men of this world are treated equally. My greatest fear is that our kids will be at the wrong place at the wrong time and treated the wrong way. And so I know that I have to up my prayer life in this season, because I know it's going to take a minute. When they start driving and get their license and they get pulled over, I'm pleading the blood of Jesus Christ over them. And I'm that old school where I will literally, when they get their cars, I will anoint them with oil.
Yes.
I will make a cross with some olive oil and lay hands on them in their car in a second. I'm that mom when my kids are not home. I pace back and forth and I pray. And I'm like, Lord, what do I need to know? What do I need to know? Speak, Lord, speak.
Tell me.
Yep. I'm that mom. And so my greatest concern obviously would be for just the young men and men of our world, their safety. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this with me.
Girl, I love you. I'll do anything for you, for real. Like, you stole my heart a long time ago.
Oh, good. I'm never giving it back.
Good. I love being on this journey with you. And the Bible talks about a great cloud of witnesses. And I feel like one of those that are like, go, Sarah, go. I'm praying you through. I'm praying you through. In the spirit and in the natural. And just love you.
I love you too. You got to know I'm in that cloud too. And I so appreciate everything that you do and add to the body of Christ. And I have that same feeling when I walk into a room and I see you, not just because I got another sister in the room, but because I have a sister in the room. And I love you.
Yes. Love you, girl. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.